interest in doing some of this yourself, or an interview, or
I'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
maybe after this one.
Get right here and just make some introductory comments. Well, greetings everyone. This is the first couch interview that we're doing up here in northwest Minnesota. And we're going to be doing 3 of these today, but to give just a little bit of background on the COWCH program, and it's not spelled like the couch that you sit on, but it's an acronym for Celebrating Our Wildlife Conservation Heritage. And it's a program that the Wildlife Society came up with in 1999. And Aldo Leopold's 3rd graduate student, Art Hawkins, was the test pilot, so to speak. And John Moriarty and I interviewed him, so that kind of got all of this going, and it's coordinated by the individual chapters of the Wildlife Society. And our first guest today is Terry Wolfe, and he's going to be interviewed by Ross Heyer, and these 2 guys have spent some bit of time together in the office, in the field, and so on. So I will just turn it over to Ross, who's going to answer questions, and Terry will make up stuff as he goes along.
I've been doing that all my life.
Well, the first thing we're going to do, Terry, is age you, of course. I know you were born in the metro Twin Cities, but what year? And
I was born at an early age, actually, in March 9th of 1947. So one of those baby boomers right after the Second World War.
in East St. Paul?
In North St. Paul.
North St. Paul.
I was the first of five kids, and 4 of us, the first 4 were pretty close together, and the last one came along about 16 years after me. So
That'd be Wendy.
Wendy.
Yeah. Well, and your parents have a lot of history to them. I've been privy to it, but I'll let you state their names and a little, just your mother's background is very interesting, as is your father's, but go ahead.
Well, my folks are, yeah, they're, actually my mother came here from Denmark at the age of 7, so see, with her mother at that point. Her dad was already here, my grandfather, and they were in farming in the Belgrade Bruton area. And on my dad's side, the Wolfe there, they kind of, a lot of my relatives there, either from some St. Paul and some from Superior and Ashland, Wisconsin. So they actually through DNA testing or whatever, they came over and landed in the Quebec area.
Huh.
And they were from Western Europe. So yeah.
Excellent.
My dad's family's been here a while though. So.
Yeah, and we have to clarify that Terry spells the last name Wolfe ends in an E, so W-O-L-F-E. Well, born in 47, obviously the Twin Cities wasn't anything like it is now, and I know that you marched north and east or whatever to get out of the concrete a bit. Tell us a little bit about that part of your childhood, early teen years.
Yeah, I think my friends even knew there was something wrong with me at an early age, and
Trapper.
yeah, the city life wasn't going to hold for too long there, and I think that's kind of what happened. But at any rate, I actually went to the University of Minnesota and started out on the Minneapolis campus, and of all things, thought maybe some type of, I was looking at aeronautical engineering. That's about as far as.
Yeah, except you're a mathematical wizard, so.
So I spent 2 quarters in, there was a 3-quarter system to a year then at the university, but about 2 quarters
Right.
in aeronautical engineering, and then I found out about the St. Paul campus, talk about looking ahead, looking around. I just knew I was going to the university, and
Sure.
so, and then I found a forestry curriculum there, and I was in forestry for maybe 2 quarters or something like that also, and then heard about wildlife management.
Yeah.
So left forestry, and Ken Winsness was kind of a student leader there, a faculty advisor, and he said, everything you want, you can get it, you can do it through forestry also, you know, and I wasn't
Good thing we
thinking
slipped you
about,
through there.
and then I'm not that interested in trees, I guess. So anyway, I owned wildlife management, and that's been a good fit. So I
Yeah.
would say I kind of came out of the university in December of 1969, and the hiring for wildlife managers at that time was done through St. Paul, the St. Paul staff, and I kind of walked into quite a nice situation. But I worked in the St. Paul office in Game and Fish Administration for about 2 years, and got a really good experience there, and worked in actually a very interesting job. I kind of working with the record keeping, the land acquisition, and land management, and they kept some of the funds in St. Paul, and they funded projects. And it was kind of my job to kind of help on acquisition work to map out, and it was colored pencils then.
Oh, sure.
And I kept a big book, you know, and wildlife management area tracks were added in here and there, and then also between fisheries and wildlife, I had, you know, kind of had some involvement with the status of those as they went along, and maybe sometimes contacting managers or whatever for we need some various paperwork or agreements and whatever to keep things moving. So
Yeah, as I recall, your mentor superior there was a man named Steve Sokolik.
yeah,
Sokolik?
Steve Sokolik, yeah.
Yeah.
He was really one of the first of a lot of really good supervisors I've had over the years, and Steve Sokolik was one that would, even though I worked quite closely with him, but I've had different supervisors over the years that were willing to give a person a lot of rope to wrap around your neck or however you wanted to wrap it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it kind of gave you, you know, here's what needs to be done, and then you figure it out from there, I guess. And that especially was true at the field level. So anyway, then two positions came open, one at Two Harbors and one at Crookston, and actually Jim Bryan, who became my supervisor in some of the later years, but he had first choice, and he had come back from the service, I think, and then, so anyway, he opted for Two Harbors, and so Crookston was left for me, and actually that was a very good fit, I would say.
Yeah.
I enjoyed working on the prairies. So July of '72, we made our way north with about a month-old daughter.
Yeah.
And found a house to rent in town here, and the rest is history.
Well, let's go back to I know when you went to Hill High School.
Yeah, that was
Which now we know as Hill Murray because it was a boys' boys' school, and then Murray was the girls' school, I believe. And,
down the street.
And you told me that, I don't remember what years these were, but you worked, I don't even know what the term for him is, but a barge man or a young kid on a barge going up and down the Mississippi.
Yeah, interesting summer jobs, I guess, working on the rivers, working on towboats. That my neighbor actually ran a company, pilot towing company, and so I did it probably in my last year of high school during summers, and then through most of probably at least three, well, I guess maybe all years of college.
Oh.
And that interesting job, and you know, we towed a lot of barges up and down the river, and I always thought they were full of peas. They were soybeans.
Well, I remember.
Man, what does the world do with all these peas?
I remember once you told me the way to get rid of debris was just
oh yeah,
the old river pile.
There was yeah.
Mississippi will flush her down the system.
And a little more to it, yeah. But we went up and down the Minnesota River, and we generally pushed barges of coal up to I don't know, PV or some other places there, and then also up to Minneapolis to the university.
Wow.
And then those barges came down and were cleaned, I did some barge cleaning in some years too, where we
That sounds tough.
with a great big vacuum cleaner and a big hose
Wow.
and clean. So then the barges were cleaned and then filled with corn or soybeans, and
Huh.
we also got some salt barges, I guess, that came up too. But then we were we were like smaller boats, more harbor type boats that we put tows together. Then probably were 16 barges or something like that.
Wow.
That then bigger boats, towboats took them south. But so yeah.
That'd be a tremendous experience just to see the characters that you would meet. You know, I mean, that's a good education.
Well, you sometimes had to be real quiet on Monday mornings because they would get paid
Oh, yeah.
Friday night,
Oh,
and it was all, you didn't have to, you had your meals. On the boat, we worked 6 hours on, 6 hours off, kind of around the clock, so once you were on, you weren't getting off.
Huh.
And so, and you got your meals and whatever, so, yeah, there were some characters that they didn't have a nickel to their name left by the time they found their way to the boat for Monday
Truly
morning.
sailors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
kind of be kind of quiet Monday mornings, and maybe the boss probably didn't want to take on too much then either, I suppose. But nobody ever fell in the river anyway,
No.
but you could do that.
I guess it goes with the territory, just how they operate down. It'd be interesting to know what it's like now.
Probably the same.
Yeah. So you graduated from the U in 71, you said?
69, fall of 69.
69.
And I went
okay.
through 4 years and one extra quarter. So extra, and a summer session at Itasca Park.
Sure.
A couple, 2 sessions there, so kind of got
Very important.
those are good sessions. Although
Yeah.
I spent most of the summer with poison ivy.
Well, at least you never got over that. I know that.
You know what? At a point there, well, Doc Mar, there was getting to be a lot of complainers for some reason that summer, I guess, at Itasca. And finally, Doc Marshall had to sit us all down one day and kind of talk. He said, there's some people maybe just aren't made for field work and whatever, And some of you that are complaining or whatever, I mean, you'd maybe learn something about it. And I kind of was pondering the situation myself as my arms and legs were itching and thinking, I don't know what. No, I never questioned that, but it was just kind of part of the
Well, there's plenty of that
ambiance.
stuff.
And
in
then I
Itasca.
spent quite a few years itching after that too. It's taken a long time to figure it out. But
Yeah.
it's kinda,
Well, I'd like to still, in your high school years, I know that your father influenced you in fishing greatly. Earl didn't hunt though, did he?
no,
But then
we
maybe.
maybe hunted squirrels a time or two. He
Yeah.
kind of got me started a
Yeah.
little bit in squirrel hunting at the farm. But he was an avid fisherman, and we fished Mille Lacs Lake when we hadn't heard about it.
There weren't any rules.
Yeah, you could catch 5 or 6 walleyes. We never caught more than 1 or 2 anyway, but
Yeah.
during the winter.
Never even thought about a phone ringing. That's how old we are, Chris. Well, the other thing I know you've told me in the past was you're trapping. I don't know what year you started that, but you had an old mentor that was kind of a character, you said, that would, I think, showed you how to maybe trap muskrats or mink or something.
Yeah, actually even in early high school, I suppose, I actually used to walk up. I was in North St. Paul, but we were right near the city,
Right.
kind of the city limits of, and Washington County was about 4 or 5 blocks away, and that was probably, I didn't realize it at the time, but I expect a lot of that land was being held by speculators,
Huh.
But anyway, so there were a lot of ponds there, and I also knew some people that wanted me to come and trap muskrats to keep them out of their front yards. But so anyway, I did trap muskrats often, I guess, and probably why I ever continued, I don't know, because I probably sold a lot of muskrats for about 25 cents or 40 cents,
Yeah.
which wasn't very much even then, but
Okay.
but I would still kind of kept at it. But I did I did even a little bit of taxidermy work for a while with squirrels and raccoons and some other, some friends of mine, we became the Royal Order of the Squirrels. And we each had a squirrel in the back window of our car.
This, I haven't heard this stuff.
Yeah.
Like a stuffed one?
Yeah, stuffed. Yeah. I graduated up to having a raccoon in the back of my car, and I was stopped by a policeman one time who said, you know, you got to get that thing out of your back window.
Really?
That thing's too big.
Yeah, all the things that cops had to deal with then.
Yeah, so another aspect, you know, and this guy does not belong in the city. You know, so.
You don't have any drugs because we got a raccoon in the back here.
There's a raccoon back there.
Well then, I mean, I remember my early years, haw bakers. I never became a trapper, but haw bakers, fur fishing, game, those were...
The Bible of the
Yeah, I mean, those, you got those, I assume, and read all that stuff. But a lot of your trapping is just from learned School of Hard Knocks.
Actually, it was. In those days, trappers didn't give out too much information. Yeah, you mentioned, a friend of mine was Vern Ward,
That's him.
old timer who, he and I trapped bobcats even in Pine County a little bit, but he was an avid mink trapper at one time, and then also got into, kind of taught me how to trap fox also. But he was active, and we both were for a while in the Trappers Association, and they used to get to meetings and whatever. So, yeah, Vern and I, probably we tried fisher trapping. Probably one of the first years that came about. Well, that was actually after I was up here, and I met him over at Big Falls.
Okay.
It was about 30 below in the winter.
Well, you're in the right habitat.
We drove up and down the back roads, hoping our vehicle would keep running and dodging logging trucks over there. That's about all that was moving. He did catch quite a nice coyote that was hanging out right on the edge of Big Falls, I think, trying to stay away from the wolves. But we never saw any fisher.
Well, you saw some changes, and well, maybe get to fur bears later. But well, just getting back to the ewe, we don't need to dwell on this too much, but you obviously were taught by some, you know, well-known and highly respected professors, Bill Marshall being one of them.
Yeah. Actually, Dan Frenzel was there only my last quarter.
Okay.
He had come over from McAllister,
Yeah.
but I did get to know him a little bit, and in fact, he helped Sue, my wife, kind of. He got me set up for my last quarter. I was at Itasca, and Sue went in and saw him. He was pretty good about me registered for classes for the last year. So then,
Was Peter Jordan
James,
there then?
I never dealt with him at all.
Okay.
James Beer, Doc
yeah.
Beer was
Wow.
a mammologist then, and joined some classes of his, and Bill Mackey and Tom Waters was in
wow.
fisheries.
Yeah.
But never had any classes with Tom Waters.
That's a well-known biologist.
I got to know all the faculty quite well at some point, because I wrote quite a letter, and I don't have no copy of that anymore, but as an undergraduate, I didn't think we undergrads were getting enough attention or something. And so I wrote a letter to, and so I got a letter back from every one of the 4 different staff members on that, you know, that I kind of commented, I guess maybe I thought they were spending too much time with their grad students or something. But, so yeah, so anyway, I got to know them all pretty well then. So, what triggered that, I don't know, but anyway, it actually was kind of a way to get to know staff a little better.
Don't get as much.
Kind of going to start out in maybe somewhat of a negative way and then work from there. But
Of course, you probably had Thomas Morley too.
oh gee, yeah.
Yeah.
Although my friend Dan Sodarski is into plants, but I never
Me either.
never really. It's kind of like soil, you know. I mean, we just have to put up with that. But it's those things that are furry and feathered things.
Yeah.
are a lot more interesting to deal with.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, good for you.
we know they eat the greens and whatever, you know.
He was I had him late in his career. Yeah.
One lung mortally, I
Yeah.
think, probably at that point.
That's correct.
Good, yeah. Good.
Well, I know that before we move on here beyond your college years, I know that the pickup you and Sue drove up here, F-100.
I don't know what they were called.
The brown
then.
one.
Yeah, it was
You bought that with trapping money.
yeah, I'd had a good fall. Talk about almost throwing a career away in a way. I was working in St. Paul at the time, and St. Paul office. I never had had a chance to just trap in the fall.
Yeah.
Through school and whatever. So,
Sure.
so I had this job in the St. Paul office, and I told them, I said, I'm going trapping, and there's no guarantees I'd have a job when I came back or anything.
Wow.
But I was determined to go for, I don't know, 6 weeks, I suppose, or something like that. Luckily, I came back and the job was still open.
Wow.
But anyway, I did. That time, I probably caught about 100 fox and then other raccoons and badgers and others in the fall. And that was when foxes were worth about $24 each.
Yeah.
And with 100 of them, and you could buy a pickup I bought a pickup for about $2,800 or
Wow.
something. So with the other furs too.
So when
Yeah.
you were on that expedition, Terry, were you tent camping, or did you find?
No, I lived at.
So you,
We were married then and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And Sue was working for the St. Paul Dispatch and Pioneer Press.
So you'd work just to drive out of the
Yeah,
metro
yeah.
area?
Yeah, out into Washington County and then
Okay.
up into Sasago County.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I lined up in permission on quite a lot of different places and then just trapped just in a car.
Wow.
Would skin the poor foxes out next to somebody's rock pile or whatever, and then come home with them draped around my neck or whatever. And never really noticed fleas then. But
Well, there
I
might-
did up in this area.
Yeah.
But
Maybe there
anyway,
were.
we lived up above a house. The Prochaskas lived below, and we had an old. Why they ever put up with it, I don't know, but they had a very, very old freezer that had run on a belt, you know, and
Wow.
it rattled and made a lot of noise, and it was
Yeah.
down on their level, but I would, my furs all went in that freezer, so.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome history. Well, I know, I think I'm right, you never served in the military.
No.
You and I both missed on either side of the...
I stayed in school, and I was probably closer than I ever realized, but as long as I stayed in school, and sometimes I was a bit behind on credits or whatever, but anyway, I did get interviewed for the draft at one point, but then eventually there was a lottery system in it.
Yeah.
It was devised, and through that drawing, I ended up with a high number, so I dodged it that way, I guess.
Yeah, well,
Sometimes there's some luck in the
a
world.
good thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to your family, Terry. I know you met your wife, Susan. She was in she was the South St. Paul.
Just St. Paul.
St. Paul, and
East side of St. Paul, yeah.
I've always loved this story. You met at Young Entrepreneurs Club,
Yeah.
which neither you or I are entrepreneurs, I don't think. But
Well, I guess, went to an all-boys high school, and so
yeah,
I don't know what my motivation was to join Junior Achievement, but anyways,
That's what it was.
Junior Achievement was kind of operated by a lot of different businesses that set up. It was high school students who would set up a small business. We'd probably have 12 to 15 kids in it, and they were from different high schools all over the cities, and
okay.
we would meet once a week and then learn business principles, and then we formed a little company, and then we sold stock for $1 each, and we tried to sell like 100 shares, and then that was our financing, and then we would come up with a, you know, there would be a president and
Sure.
vice president of these companies, and then you'd go through the whole winter, you know, either making some things and selling them and whatever, and by the end, and then ate a few pizzas, I think, along the way, and then when you got all done, the stockholders probably got, sometimes they got $1.10 or $1.25 for their shares, and sometimes less.
Well, a lot of lessons learned there, I'm sure.
I was in it one year as my senior year. Sue was in it 3 years, and her first year she was secretary and of a club, of a business, and last 2 years she was president. And she went quite a ways in junior achievement. She actually became Miss Junior Achievement, I guess.
Wow.
One year, so that's some accolades that made the paper, and so, and actually took a number of trips also, and just.
Well, Sue is from good Irish stock in St. Paul.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned earlier when you moved to Crookston, your daughter Kelly was months old, or it's hard to imagine a move like that. Probably the dead of winter too, who knows? But.
Yeah, and actually housing wasn't very plentiful in Crookston either. The Sadarskis seemed to have taken up most of it or something, free. So
Down in the Sampson.
yeah, so that edition was out, you know. But at any rate, I looked around Crookston, really couldn't find anything, and then they kind of wanted us to live in the county seat, and so roaming around further, I did find a house down right north of Maple Lake at Mentor, and actually did have approval to live there if we wanted, I guess, or whatever. But then we did find this house that we're in now. We moved to Crookston and stayed in the same place the whole time here. But at any rate, it had been rented by a former conservation officer in this area for a while. But so we rented for a year and then bought the house. So Crookston was, well, it's much smarter to be in the county seat in those days, because we were buying land and you had to wanted to be near a courthouse, or fair amount of our work was involved there.
All right.
So, yeah.
So then child number 2 came along.
Yeah, Kelly, our first, was our daughter, and born 72 in July 72. Then Patrick, 2.25 years later, came 74.
Well, those, the youngster is nearby, but Kelly and her husband and family, tell us a bit about them. They're in Massachusetts.
Kelly did well in school and whatever, and graduated from high school in Crookston, ended up at St. Ben's, and graduated from there, and kind of kept an interest in botany over the years, and prairie. She did some prairie projects and worked with Dan Sadarski.
Yeah.
A project one year in the Bruno Creek wildlife area, and at any rate, then ended up with a PhD through University of Ames, Iowa, anyway, and then found their way to the East Coast. They were in Boston for a while. She met her husband at St. John's, St. Ben's,
Yep.
and they both took their postdoctorate work out in, actually out of Harvard. They both were at Harvard for a while, and even knew E.O. Wilson a little bit, so it's kind of interesting. And the part I especially find interesting is this young lady from the prairies of the Midwest is teaching at Holy Cross there now and leading field trips to the seashore, keeping track of when the tides go in and out, and storms and various other things.
Something you and I would have no clue about.
I don't know where she picked all that up.
Well, she's smart.
Yeah. So, and Patrick ended up as, he went to UND after graduating from Crookston. He was more athletically inclined, I would say. He was in sports pretty much year round, and then and played football and wrestled in the winter and baseball in the spring. And then he went to UND, and then he went east a ways, but about an hour's drive to Boston, and has been a 6th grade teacher there and doing well there. He coaches wrestling and actually coaches JV football. So
Yeah, he's
yeah.
busy on that.
Yeah.
And he followed his dad's line. He married his high school sweetheart.
Yeah, that's true.
And they have 3 kids, and Kelly and Rob have 2 kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, both of our kids, we spent quite a bit of time in the outdoors, I would say, you know, and hunting and fishing and trapping and whatever. So that was,
No,
yeah.
you're good parents, they're good kids. I think the only thing hard on you is that those grandsons in Massachusetts, they parked the car already.
Well, they've been, through their mother's efforts, they're trying to hang on to their awes. They had some teachers there that had no awes, and so Kelly was had to comment to the kids, "We're holding our R's here." So,
Yeah, that's a
even
big
though your
change
teacher
for
talks that way,
Midwesterner.
you don't need to talk that way. So, yeah, so far, so good.
It's gonna be hard for them, I think, but
I just got a card from the. They were in the Great Smoky Mountains here just in the last week or a few days, so they do get about.
well, knowing Kelly,
It's been
she
a spring
knows
break.
the ephemeral plants are probably blooming in the Smokies right now.
Yeah, yeah. So.
They'd be ahead of us probably. Well, so Andy, you mentioned earlier your professional career, your first job was with the same organization you stayed with your whole life, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and then the section of wildlife. I still believe it was Fish and Wildlife Division at that time.
Well, there was, we were together, yeah, Fish and
Yeah.
Wildlife, but still separate.
Sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't really have co-meetings, you know, it was pretty.
But you worked out of your house to start your career here in Crookston?
Yeah, but yeah, pretty much managers who worked under Bob Farms, who was at Thief River Falls, and George Davis was at Carlstead, and I was at Crookston here, and I had replaced Jerry Martins, who had been at Crookston for about 12 years ahead of me. And so all of us worked out of our homes, and one time I think our boss at Bemidji was Vern Gunvalson, and he had, I'd asked him one time, I guess I was filling out income tax or whatever in the spring, and I said, well, and I was trying to claim my office as, you know, as a business expense, and I'd asked Vern about, well, it says you have to have your office at home. I said, do I really have to have it at home? He said, yeah, otherwise he said you're going to be sitting out on the curb.
Well,
so it's in your home.
that answers that.
Yeah.
Well, the changes you've seen. Yeah, so I mean, some of these questions that I'm asking you are easy for you because you stayed at your same duty station.
Yeah,
And,
for 40-some years.
Right.
So, kind of I get into the career end of it. It has been really enjoyable. One thing I would say when I came on, and I worked under people who, we were always on a mission, you know, and Bob Farms was our mission leader in a lot of ways, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, Jerry Martins, George Davis, and I, we were a threesome kind of that. Jerry was at Thief Lake, and they had some manpower and equipment there that we tagged into sometimes, but the three of us, we didn't really have any assistants or anything else at that time, so we worked together and sometimes on burns and various things, but anyway, I always had the idea that I was here to buy land, I guess, and in fact George and I both were. Bob Farms was our boss, but we pretty much were the two that got into that, but we were saving the wetlands in those days. There was a program to purchase wildlife areas, and so I took that to heart and kind of enjoyed. There's a pretty good challenge there, I would have to say, in this area buying land. So when I first came, Jerry I got baptized pretty quick on this, I guess. Jerry had, when he left, had an option on 560 acres north of Erskine on the Polk Wildlife Area, and options in those days were usually 6 months, and we had 6 months to get county board approval and approval through the St. Paul office and whatever, and so I had, you know, that out of St. Paul, it was that, well, you need to get this county board approval thing in. You know, like, oh yeah, okay, I'll get that sent in soon, you know. Well, in those days, we had to deal with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and they had a board. And I learned kind of quick, I guess, that. So, and they advised the county board. It was kind of,
Oh, really?
if you're a politician, you would figure out ways to, so you don't take the heat, maybe, you know, quite so much, you know. So if you get a recommendation from a board, then it might be okay to approve it. So, so I met with the Soil and Water Conservation Board, and things sounded pretty good, and so we'll send you a letter, you know, when we, with some comments or whatever. So it's kind of the first one, and in this area, people, I learned this quick too, that people will be very nice. People are generally very nice to you and whatever, but they also maybe don't agree with you. So there's ways they can be nice and yet kind of say no. And kind of the first letter I got back was, well, we think it would probably be okay right after hell freezes over. You know,
Yeah.
and so, and then they had a few other comments, and so the next month you're back to meet again, you know, and see if maybe we can warm hell up a bit or something, you know. So at any rate, I just had to. We wildlife managers, we do everything we can to dodge dealing with people, you know. And so after a month or two of dealing with that board, Sue had taken the course, the Dale Carnegie course, and one of the books that she had was How to Win Friends and Influence People, and pretty soon I was reading that book pretty closely. And it's and I would highly recommend that to any. Actually, probably taking a course or something, but anyway, how to deal with people. So at any rate, eventually, I think after 2 or 3 months of meeting back and forth with that group, we finally got around, and I got the county board approval, but it didn't come easy, and that was probably the part on land acquisition. It's when you finally get approval, you know, and none of them are too easy. Well, some of them were fairly easy, but it's a battle all the way, you know, and a challenge and whatever. And so when you can win some, it's kind of a nice feeling. So I've enjoyed over the years a lot of land acquisition work, you know.
Well, thank goodness, of course, you and your comrades did that at that time, because those of us that followed, you know, get to enjoy the fruits of your labors. Do you remember, Terry, when the soil and water, when did that drop out of the scene as far as dealing with the county board?
Well, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts were supposed to, there was some language in there, you know, to advise the county board regarding soils and water. And well, the Soil and Water Conservation District, they weren't too comfortable
They don't want
after a while advising either, because a lot of what we were buying were swamps and marshes, you know, and so so at any rate, that kind of continued for some time, and then eventually Polk County went different ways, and actually the Polk County Board, I had good relations with them for a lot of years, and Red Lake County also, 2 counties I worked in, but at any rate, then eventually it went to maybe the town board should be advisory, and well, that worked both ways, I would have to say, in that town boards can be political too, or whatever, you know. So and they would have a real hard time saying no or whatever if it was an old timer in the township that wanted to sell land to the state. And so I kind of smirked a little bit on some of the situations they got themselves into, and maybe not being that hepped up about the state taking land off the tax rolls the way they looked at it, but yet what could they say to their neighbor, you know? So, so, and then if it got real hot, sometimes the Polk County Planning Commission would be another one that they could put us back to. And the Polk County Planning Commission really didn't know what to do with it, you know, and so I guess eventually we kind of, I guess that, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I did refer back to that book fairly often, you know, and I mean, you kind of have to look at it from their standpoint, you know, and kind of, another one, you never badmouth, I learned this quick, you never badmouth anybody because generally they're related to everybody else.
Yeah.
It seems like, and so you didn't make enemies, and I also used to think, you know, if I need to be pulled out of the ditch sometime, I don't really want to have to go begging too far, I guess. So
great analogy, and
yeah, so.
well, your record speaks for itself on land acquisition and the approach you took with people here in the county.
In acquisition, we did have some. Well, we had, you know, when I was in the throes of that, I probably would keep 4 to 6 tracks going in a year or something like that. You know, just in various stages. You know, there was a lot of. You had to prepare project proposals to get them approved in St. Paul, draw maps, and I guess and then dealing with various people along the way. But so all various steps you'd have to keep going, and then funding was our funding was, I think it was that we were getting like 50 cents per a surcharge on small game hunting licenses for quite a few years, but we did. Funding was they wanted wetlands and prairies and whatever, mainly wetlands, but anyway we worked in grasslands along with that, and so in fact part of the mission was even Dave Vassell was our boss, head of game, then it was Game and Fish, and he was out of St. Paul. Whenever Dave would call, Terry, are you buying some wetlands? You know, I mean, so you kind of knew what the mission was, you know, all the way through.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that was the concern. So.
Well, I think at the start of your career, the Save the Wetlands program would have been, we had this goal of, as I recall as a young fellow, just 1 million acres and of WMAs, the wildlife management areas, and during your career time, we pushed beyond that and still going.
Yeah.
It really is an impressive program, and
it's a good thing we did that because there wouldn't be a lot
that's
left in a lot of areas. So
yeah,
you know, we added we got into some. We talked the wetlands and grasslands and whatever, but we got into some forested tracts also. It's kind of quite a bit north of Erskine, some big units there, Polk, Erskine, Kayak, and Timberdoodle. I guess they're a good part, some part forested and wetlands and whatever, you know, pretty good mix and actually pretty nice areas to hunt.
yeah.
We added kind of a different one was the Hewitt wildlife area between halfway up the Red Lake River. That we bought from Northern States Power Company, who bought that in about 1910, thinking towards a hydro power dam in that area. And I think we bought about 350 acres or something from them. They finally, in about 1985 or so, they finally decided there wouldn't be any hydropower dam there, so so they sold that to us. But then we had in a little bit from the state park that was kind of declared surplus. But one you and I were involved in dealing with people, and it's even come up recently in Lacaparo County, was the Oak Ridge Marsh, which you may well remember, but at any rate, we there again meeting with the town board, and I kind of left that one for you, and by golly, it worked out. But you meet with the town board, and Mr. Reuben Iverson was I don't know, he wasn't a real big farmer there, but big in that area. Yeah. And his son-in-law was on the town board at the time, and so the son-in-law was, and they lived pretty close together, was kind of under a bit of pressure here. It was up to the town board to recommend, and I think we were at I don't know how many meetings, we were at least 2, I know, and maybe
Three, I
more.
think.
Was it up to 3?
You know,
But at one of them, and this is where you kind of like, where you maybe know some people or whatever that can help you, but one older resident in the township, after the discussion was back and forth and whatever, and finally Mr. Olson says, you know, Reuben, and Reuben was gagging on the DNR taking any land there. He's, you know, I think I was just figuring the other day, I think you bought 22 farms over the years that you, and you know, and when you're talking taking land out of production or eliminating family farms, 22, you know, so at any rate, and that, just recently in Lacaparo County, you know, it was somewhat the same talk, you know.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, that we're eliminating these family farms or whatever, but so, at any rate,
well, Arnold Olson was,
yeah,
he made our night.
and we got that piece and
Yep.
and added on to the Oak Ridge Marsh. So
That's right.
kind of a, well, we had to go a little further here on acquisition, and that, I guess, yeah, some getting far more recent, but it was well, the county board eventually passed a no net gain, I guess, of tax off their land off the tax rolls. But I always didn't take that too seriously, in that they never sent me a copy. So I thought, I've never seen that. So, but I've heard a little bit. So, but anyway, I always acted like I didn't know anything about it. But we finally did on our Pembina wildlife area. It was 120 acres we were trying to get there, and that one was the township and county were gagging a bit on that, and so finally then no net loss got in there. So we and this is where, if you get the right people to help you, it can do a lot of good. But Mike Carroll was our regional administrator at the time, and Mike Carroll, an old forester, and he was a good one to handle this. But we decided that we maybe could give up a couple of trust fund 40s that were mostly underwater, like 37 acres out of the 40 was underwater. We could sell that, and what would we lose? And so Mike Carroll agreed to come over and meet with a couple of the county board members, and they met at the incinerator at Foston. So we always kind of wondered who was going to come out of that, even, you know. But at any rate, but you know, by bringing in the regional administrator, you know, to kind of meet with them, and all right, we'll give a little bit here. We'll I think we put 3 40s up for sale, or at least what we agreed to at our level.
Yeah.
And I think 2 were sold, and to tell you the truth, I don't even know which ones. I think they were sold, but anyway, we gained some good relations there, and so we were able to get a hold of this 120. But then the big enchilada came along, and it was shortly after that Forrest Thorson passed away. Sitting in Onstead and Crookston Township, I think, 3,000 acres that we were pretty interested in, almost all of it. And Onstead Township had already passed a resolution that they didn't want any more acquisition in their township,
Yeah.
unless they approved it or whatever, and that kind of would have been under the hell freezing over situation too. So, so 3,000 acres, and so we, DNR, Nature Conservancy, and the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service, all kind of, DNR didn't have money for all of it. We didn't really want all of it either, but we didn't want any of that to get away. And so, you know what, we met with that township about three months in a row, and Jerry Jacobson, was a county commissioner from Fertile at the time, and he met with us, and he was supportive, and I kind of think he never really said anything, but I think he lost his job the next election, and I think it was probably because of his vote. But at any rate, in fact, the county, they approved us buying about 800 acres, but and then Nature Conservancy said, well, we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to pay the taxes over the years here and whatever. So I never had this happen before, but we came to meet the county board, and they said, well, we'll give you approval on the 800 acres, but we really think you should take the 1,200 acres also to guarantee that we'll get payments in lieu of taxes. And so I had to go back and revise my county approval form to another 1,200 acres. Yeah, so anyway, and not a mention was made on that of you know, how are we going to offset that by selling anything, you know, so we never did. And,
well, that always speaks to your rapport with local people. Yeah, ironically, Jerry Jacobson is back on the county board.
Yeah,
so
he lost an election there, and then waited a couple more, and then came back, and he's running the county board again now.
Yeah,
but we had coffee with him after just to thank him for that.
He treated us well.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So,
well, during your early years, you still, despite how busy you were buying land and you know, your personal side of life, but you immediately got intertwined with Dr. Dan Smedarsky at UMC and Dr. Robert Seablum at UND, and you started kind of what a lot of us fell into later of mixing students with the possibility of the outdoors, and what a great world we're living in.
I would say that the big plus, you know, not only living in the county seat, but the university here.
Yeah.
Actually, another big aspect is having a radio station and newspaper here, but yeah, Dan Smedarsky and I got into a lot of trouble together, basically, you know, but man,
good trouble.
Yeah, but we got to know some farmers, you know, early in the morning, pulling our truck out of the mud or whatever, and I don't know, helping put the fire out or whatever. So
yeah,
but students helped band ducks for us. I guess we got into a little duck banding of wood ducks and various projects over the years. So
yeah, a good thing. Well, I mean, your 4+ decade career, to say you saw changes in not only equipment but employees, the way the state operated. I think maybe a description of just your typical burn in those 70s, the equipment was basically nil.
Yeah, we did use just a 5-gallon bucket full of water and gunny sacks sometimes just to beat flames out. And
remarkable, really.
Yeah, that we. In fact, my first burn in the fall I came in '72, and I knew I never had a burn course to the university. There had been one offered there, but at any rate it didn't work out. But at any rate, so the first fall here, I knew the prairies needed to be burnt. So George Davis came down, and why he ever came back after that, I don't know. But and then Jerry Lee at Forester at Bagley came over, and he had a pump rig on his truck, but we used that pump rig to fill up our pump cans. he would turn the pump on, fill up our pump can, and then shut it off. And then
wow.
and it was kind of a way, I think, that we managers, you know, well, George was on the Tipanucas Wildlife area. We took on about a quarter section on the northeast corner.
Huh.
And so I would run my pump can, and George was on the roadside and with a drip torch in his pump can, and I was with Jerry, and he was driving ahead. And we had no fire break or anything out there. We just used the wind blowing away, like it was a southwest wind.
Right
and
through the tall grass.
Oh yeah, so probably following his wheel track or something.
Yeah.
And squirt a little bit and then run a drip torch. And George finally came over and he said, you know, we'll be lucky if we keep this on the unit.
Boy, is a good feeling.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, so Jerry, he eventually ran his pump out of water. And just filling my can up, you know, and squirting a little bit. So he had to head, I don't know if he went to the Red River or what, but at any rate, he had to go get more water. He was gone a long time, but at any rate,
wow.
It came back and we finished it, but
Well, I think from humble beginnings as well, you were such a good burn boss and understood fire so well throughout
Yeah,
your
that was
career.
yeah, I always consider that pretty important. In fact, this time of the year, we're here in the late April, and it was the time of the year we just knew we had to be burning,
Yeah.
whatever. So, kind of working with. I enjoyed always. For most years, I had between one or two or three students or others that worked with us, and yeah, sometimes older people too that worked with us in the spring. But it was they always knew that our main mission was to be burning grasslands, and one motivator I used to keep on the wall there was a graph every year of what the acres of burns that we had each year.
Right.
And so always the mission was to beat anything that we had in the past, and so we kept rising, you know. But anyway, they knew it was a motivator, you know, right away that well, this is what we're about, and we need to get out and burn the grass. So
Well, again, a testimony to your great burning skills is your big machine early in my career with you was a three-wheeler. And I was at the Rover's office yesterday, and they have a brand new big massive track thing that makes a Kubota look like a three-wheeler basically, and so the equipment changes you saw are remarkable.
I had to tell them about that. I had seen that too, and they came back with a new transmission or something in it from Grand Forks. But
Oh,
I said, you know, when we were pretty proud when we had a worker that was pretty mechanically inclined who took a three-wheeler and changed the gear ratio on that to make it somewhat of a tractor, so we could lower the gear ratio basically, and then we pulled a small trailer with that.
right.
And occasionally tipped the whole thing over, going
Yeah.
over gopher mounds and whatever. But yeah, so
Well, that's why
Burning was quite a
early in your
challenge.
career, I mean, and later in your career, I was often marveled when young people would say, well, that guy over there keeps putting this pump can on. We don't even use pump cans anymore, you know, and you certainly, that was your main water source.
well, if I was
going
going to see something get away, I had something at least to
Yeah.
argue with it about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always kind of felt like you'd have something.
Yeah,
And a lot of times a rake or a broom wasn't going to do it, you know. So yeah.
yeah.
No, in fact, yeah, some credit to Dan Sodarski. When Dan completed his doctorate work, and I read his dissertation a number of times, but a big one there was on our various wildlife areas, or those grassland units that had prairie chickens, you wanted to have a black spot, and as many of those as possible, just for brood use and insects production and that type of thing. So it was kind of working with the university and others in a lot of ways was a big plus, you know. And Dan and I did a lot of things together. I guess over the years, I called him at about midnight one night with a fire on the Dugdale unit that we were only half or 2/3 of the way around it, and it was a pretty big burn. And both of us that were out there
We're exhausted.
Yeah. And so I called Dan. We didn't have phones or radios or anything then, but I went to Robert Broden's house, a neighbor there, and called Dan. And he's working on his PhD then, and he had a test the next day, and so I said, a test, you know. And he was very hesitant, but you know, and I don't know if he. Anyway, he still got his PhD.
He
Did come out. And my pleading must have worked at that point, I guess. So he came out, and we finally got around it. But burning at night is kind of interesting too. I mean, you get a glow in the sky and red.
Yeah, and the landscape totally is transformed to the human mind.
And then you put your fire out, and the whole world is black, and then
Pitch dark.
oh, how do we get out of here? where do we go, you know? So,
Yeah.
and then you're watching for towers in the, well, I don't even, there weren't even towers then to speak
Right.
of, so
Yeah.
eventually we'd find our way back, I guess, but, yeah.
Well, certainly, we still get this from the new wildlife crew in Crookston, well, Erskine now, I guess, but, you know, how they enjoy going through Euro records, many of them on onion skins. Do you young guys know what onion skin is? You say that? That would be when you're typing, you have in triplicate, you know, a carbon, and the onion skin is a real thin sheet of paper that the typing would be on that too. But so a lot of the records that Terry kept over the years, you know, his copy was the onion skin, and these are really remarkable records. But for the new generation, it's hard to fathom that.
Can
such
make
a thing
copies
is
now, yeah, that's true. Well, actually, even in, to make appraisals, well, further in land acquisition, this was kind of remarkable, I would say, that the wildlife manager was, he made the proposal, you know, he's the one who was out looking at the land and deciding this would be make a good wildlife area, you know, and then contacting landowners, and sometimes the landowner came to us first. But anyway, then that looks like a good piece. Then you had to draw up a map, so you did that, and then we made the appraisal, and
Yeah.
I never had a formal appraisal class ever, but I'd read a bunch of them in St. Paul. And so pretty soon I'm in the courthouse and I'm looking at vicinity sales and making comparable sales and on. And I'm drawing up this appraisal, which a lot of those could be done in about 4 pages, but and maybe that included somewhat of a map. So pretty brief. But those all you make on your typewriter, you could make about. Made you pretty careful on your typewriter, because if you blew a letter,
All over.
then you got to erase all those, you know, so underneath and whatever, so, and then keep going. So, but at any rate, you could make about 4 copies, and they probably wanted 3 of them in St. Paul or something like that.
Yeah.
So then we made the appraisal, and then if that was approved in St. Paul, then we also took the option. so then that. And then we had to get county approval and whatever, but so we were doing, I mean,
Beginning
now
to end.
all those steps are done
Yeah.
by a different,
Right.
but you know that there was a lot of concern, well, maybe there's more these days, but you know, you would think there could be problems in that the same person, well, they did declare that basically, that, you know, different people should be doing different parts, but
Yeah.
all we wildlife managers in the western part of the state did that, you know, we made our own appraisals and sent them in, and then in later years, you know, we hired appraisals done. But if you do that long enough, you get a real good feel for what land is worth or valued at, you know, by looking at sales and
Sure.
whatever. So and the county knew what you're paying also, so there was a bit of a checks and balance. I mean, you couldn't just. Well, you had to have it approved in St. Paul too, and that was, again, you know, they weren't going to approve anything that was too far off or whatever, so.
Yeah.
But,
Well, you had such freedom, it's almost, again, we
Yeah, it's
used the word remarkable a lot today, but,
yeah,
I mean, you told me about signing options on the hood of a
yeah,
farmer's pickup, and it's like a painting in my mind now, or is this something out of Norman Rockwell, or, you know, that would never ever happen in today's world.
no, it was a different era. Well, some of the other, you know, another part of our job was land acquisition was a big one, but then then you got into the management end, and burning was part of one of those. A lot of wetland management was, and whether we did build a few impoundments over the years, and that type of thing, or raised culverts or maybe and that type of thing. Dug a lot of potholes, whatever, but wetland management was, wildlife managers for a while I think were kind of the next thing to beaver.
Yeah.
And we were out to plug up any water and a lot of our project proposals involved maybe buying 2 or 3 tracts and then an impoundment there of some sort, which we backed off of that later years, you know, not
Yeah.
buying more natural wetlands and that type of thing. But anyway, we did buy a bunch of different lake shore or ponds, the edges of ponds, and so a lot of it was wetland management in
Yeah,
various
well,
ways. That was a fun one.
To add on to that, I mean, being a man of great initiative, you looked at wetlands and wood ducks and you finally deducted that after marching around that maybe there was a lack of cavity nesting opportunities, and you didn't go about it in a small way. I think at the peak of our career together we were managing almost 700 boxes.
Yeah, we didn't know when to quit. Really.
Well, it was fun.
Yeah, we got into wood duck boxes on a fairly large scale, to the point we were we were buying a few thousand or whatever board feet of 10-inch pine, rough cut pine, and we would stack the boards up and pretty much saw everything with chainsaws.
Yeah.
But you could make a pretty stack of 10 or 12 boards and then slice right through, and so we skipped a lot of the handsaw type stuff or whatever, you know, or radial arm or table saw, and built them by the hundreds. And yeah, eventually, I think both of us aged too much on that after each falling out of a tree, and
wow.
so we eventually got off of that. But we argued with raccoons for quite a few years, and then the fisher eventually put us out of business because they could go any place that a wood duck could go, and so eventually but you know, it kind of, in a project I made, could be written up at some time, but I guess one of them was, you know, as we put a lot of boxes up north of Erskine, it kind of reached the point, so so if you put up a lot of nest sites, secure nest sites, then what's the limiting factor on wood ducks in this area, you know? And so we probably had 200 boxes up then, so we put up 400 boxes down there, and we still filled a lot of those. Probably a third of them had wood ducks in them or something. So we never went to 600, but you did kind of wonder, so what, and we did it, we banded ducks, we banded hens out of boxes we caught in the spring. The burn crew would burn until into May, and then we would take about a week or so at the end and run around and catch hens in boxes and band them. And then we also, at the beginnings of when Leonard Rydell owned what's now Rydell National Wildlife Refuge, we banded wood ducks out there too, and also with the idea, so you band a bunch of these birds, what happens to them, you know? And so I guess one I figured out, I guess, is that mink and raccoons and horned owls never turn in the bands. You know, so, but anyway,
Almost like humans now.
and hunters never turned in the bands of adult hens that we caught in boxes. Adult hens were not too prone to hunting, for what it seemed like, and so it was. Their losses were to the mink and the horned owls and whatever, you know. But that was one thing I think that we picked up there. But so.
Well, I think on the side of that work, what I always admired about working for you is that project instigated us getting outside. I mean, that was always our goal every day, but because of that project, we got to look down in on flying squirrels, saw-whet owls, kestrels. We saw a lot of things on our units when other managers maybe were holed up for a couple weeks in the winter. We were out there doing it, which that's the thrust of it right there for a field person.
Every manager should try to pull a 14-foot lash through the woods.
Well, 97 we were on snowshoes doing that. That was brutal, but we were in good shape then. Well, we kind of get into the point here, Terry, on the career where, I don't know, with the time that you've worked, you know, one of the questions here is what tools and instruments changed and what were the issues that, you know, that these things are all intermingled, but you saw such extreme changes that, you know, three-wheeler at the beginning of your career to email. I mean, you and I used to walk down to the engineering firm to make copies,
Yeah.
and, you know, that's remarkable. Then fax machines came into our office, and eventually email came into our office. And I would say that the computer was one of your closest allies.
Oh, I fought technology all the way through. My Bob Farms commented that, well, more that, Wolf, I can never get a hold of you. You know, on the phone, that was when you just had a phone, you know, we didn't have, and I didn't have, you need to get an answering service, and well, I didn't, see that. So, John Scharf was the wildlife manager at Morris, and Bob Farms John then wrote me a letter one day, and he said, you know, Terry, it's not as bad as you think, you know, you could handle it.
Used
you
it,
know.
your own kind against
Yeah,
you.
so you know, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm out all day, then I come home, and then there's 5 or 10 calls, and I'd be making half the night, you know, or whatever, but
Yeah.
I adapted eventually, but yeah, I tend, you know, when you have an office at home, then you tend to think you need to be outside working, you know, or out working, so, you know, you didn't really sitting in your office at home, which I, you know, type up appraisals and do a lot of work, you know, but was at home, but, so it tended to push me out, I guess, or
Yeah.
wanting to be out also, I guess.
Sure.
So,
Well, you went,
yeah.
again, the changes you've seen just fauna-wise and florally, but young people today would be in disbelief that as a younger manager, you literally would camp down at Lee Nursery and try to keep the 28 to 35 moose from chewing up all their tree stock. And I mean, you obviously went above and beyond there, but those were things that I always felt separated you from a lot of other managers. Was Orville Lee never forgot how well you treated him. I don't know how many trees you say, but it's hard for us to imagine moose numbers like that now.
Yeah, we've gone through quite a lot of depredations for no win, I would say, over the years, you know, but anyway, but by all concerned probably, but I don't know, it's that's still a challenge today, I guess, you know, in a lot of ways, but anyway, it's yeah, Orville was a nice person and liked him well, but he was a bit of a complainer, you know, so.
Yeah.
But as I did find myself out there all one night pondering, I thought, how long am I going to have to do this, you know? And so I called the regional office on that, you know. I mean, this doesn't seem like it's going to work out for that well, but yeah, we state over the years came up with various ways, you know, other people coming in kind of from the outside, you know, that within DNR, you know, that would offer fencing and, you know, and some dollars in their pockets and whatever. So, and then we got into building fences and that type of thing. So, yeah.
I think that kind of leads me to the point of, you know, the question of the hardest or darkest time of your career, or what triggered that versus, you know, your highest parts, which I'm guessing you have so many that it's kind of a moot question, but.
Yeah, low part, I don't know, I enjoyed pretty much all of it, I guess, but, you know, it's kind of, a lot of it's the challenge, you know, I guess you kind of have to. Yeah. You know, I suppose you didn't really like to hear about somebody's deer, moose, or beaver problem, although some of those provided adventure, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess one time with Conservation Officer Al Hansen went with me down north of McIntosh to blow a beaver dam. They had certification, whatever, to do it at the time. So Al and I canoed down the ditch and creek and got to the beaver dam, and so he got it set up and using Kennepack at the time, and of course you put enough in there to, that dam isn't coming back, you know, and so then you got a few minutes, you can cut the fuse whatever length you want. Well, that stand waiting, anticipating is very difficult, you know, for when the blow is coming. So you don't want to make your fuse too long.
Yeah.
And so we get the fuse lit, and we jump in the canoe, and the creek goes down, and then it makes a big sweep, and it comes almost right back to the dam. Well, we're really paddling then.
So
And
the big
yeah.
U-shape.
Oh yeah. Who would check ahead, you know, to see where the creek goes? So it blew, and of course we had our baseball caps on, you know, so we were protected, you know. So we're watching with the mud and the sticks coming down, but anyway, we made it through that.
Wow. Yeah.
Didn't take too long for Al eventually to. Why don't you just blow your own beaver dams, you know? So he, no certification or anything.
Yeah.
He gave me the blasting caps and Kennebec, fuse, everything I needed, and so I just took that on too, and yeah, in later years there was a lot more certification involved in that, but anyway,
But the beaver, like some of the species, when you first came to Crookston, they were probably not very abundant.
not quite so numerous. Yeah,
I mean, you saw ups and downs over your career, but.
Well, they usually found our control structure.
Yeah, they would seek those out. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, these questions, what's your most dangerous or frightening experience in your career?
Well, you and I were in one together. We probably should. Well, I've had experiences with Dan Zdarsky and the burning, and also you and I guess, had a lot of experiences, but one is probably we learned a few things the hard way, and one of them, I guess, is that you can have carryover from, you think you have a fire out one day, and then it can start up again the next, and so and usually those are days when it's blowing like a banshee, and so we,
Only 45 miles an hour
yeah,
that day.
at 11 in the morning probably. So I think we were actually going to run another burn the next day, in that windy day, and then we had to call our burns in, and so we said, no, we're not going to burn this. And I think you had gone down to check our burn from the day before, and got there in time to have it blowing through some corn stubble, and you weren't really able to stop it, and then it
Close.
yeah, then it got into some brush, and then even then leaped across a plowed field, and looking at that afterwards, it was either 400 or 600 feet that it somehow jumped.
Yeah.
A black field.
They were unlucky.
So then we spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. Well, we spent the first day, I guess, getting acquainted with 3 different fire departments and some landowners. And
well, you
where
should.
it jumped the township road, and it went, I don't know, a mile and a half. We probably had 2 miles of fire when we were done then.
Yeah.
But then dry conditions. We talked about doing a rain dance then. We were dancing for rain, and to no avail, but we didn't, then we were afraid to leave it. So.
Well, your leadership during that wildfire taught me a lot. I remember Walter Soley, we just went to his house to use the phone, and you're trying to calm him down with your left arm, and at the same time you're saying, can I go in your house and use your phone? Well, he's a decent human being too, but that fire was like 800 yards from his homestead and marching right along. But that, and about 3 a.m. that night, I was beat. We were putting out a flanking fire in the dark, and I was kind of lollygagging behind. He looked back and he said, "It's not going to go away, you better just pick up the pace." That always impressed me, that you'd been on that fire as long as I had. And I was a few years younger than you, but you were marching strongly. And yeah, that was a learning experience.
That kind of, Walter didn't. He called home at one point and commented to Sue that he was going to sue us for our house if he lost his house. And so, which then she got a hold of the sheriff's office, and so there we had plenty of communication going on through all that. But at any rate, kind of that summary of that, and I know after spending a couple of days out there, we'd come home and sleep a few hours and then go back, but so then the Inquisition at the end of that through forestry and whatever, and kind of what happened, and I think, Rod, you were concerned about what might happen here and whatever, and I was thinking to myself, you know, after living out there in the dirt for days, and that's not totally our fault here exactly, you know, and we're doing our best, and I thought, you know, if they're gonna crucify us over this, and I'll put my drip torch away or whatever, but I would have to say through DNR and forestry, whatever, you know, there was a good inquisition. I mean, they just asked for the facts, and we talked back and forth about it, and it was
valuable.
If I can't think of the area forest.
John Rohr?
Yeah, it was something like that.
He was really decent.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a good...
But my name
just
was on the
fact-finding.
burn boss line. Anyway,
John Rodewald.
that's John Rodewald. Yeah, he was decent. I haven't
Became
been, I
regional
didn't
forestry.
sleep
Well,
the
he was
night before that.
Probably regional forestry at the time, but yeah. So I would have to say DNR gave us, and they gave us equipment eventually too more, but they were very supportive on the burning, you know, as far as, and you know, there's some others of us in this room too have learned, you know, that sometimes fire finds a way to get over the line or something, but it's been.
That cameraman's not saying much, but.
Got his hat down low now, but anyway. So.
Well, your approach as a supervisor was, you're a humble man. You never dictated levels amongst your employees, which I always was so gracious for. I mean, Ruth Ann, when we eventually got a technician, Ruth Ann Frankie, you know, maybe it was bad that you allowed me to do things that probably weren't in my, whatever they call it, position description. But
yeah.
We worked as a team, and you know, the question about what was the most humorous experience, well, every day we laughed. I mean, there weren't many days when we didn't laugh at something, and we had such a good work atmosphere that, I mean, you can try to tell me what you think one of your most funny experiences were, but...
Involving you, or?
No. Thousands, you had, you know, thousands every day, I mean.
Well, we probably should, for the record, you know, the three of us the three musketeers at that point, standing around a fence post on the Dugdale.
I knew this was coming.
Yeah, actually I think of a couple here, but standing by a fence post, an old railroad tie that was sunk in, and for some reason we were doing battle with that, I think, to get it out of there.
Yeah, we're
or
pulling
replace
those.
it or something. Yeah. And it had about a dozen mice in it. And pretty soon, Ruth Ann's had enough sense to stand back a ways, but the middle one of the musketeers was standing pretty close, and pretty soon a mouse got up his leg, pants leg. And so you have a young lady standing there and the boss, you know, and so, and this mouse is getting higher and higher, and so action needs to be taken somehow. I don't remember. There's a lot of dancing around there and whatever, but...
Well, eventually I did ask Ruth Ann to turn around and drop my drawers. They were deer mice, so I felt sorry for them.
Yeah, he was kind of admiring them to a point. Exactly. Look at all the mice here, and then whoa!
I didn't feel it at first, and Ruth Ann was pointing at my leg. Oh, geez, there is a mouse.
There's been quite a few others, I guess, but some others involving mice too, I guess. But yeah, maybe that's enough. So, yeah, I enjoyed, and I found we have a couple of college students here that are sitting in on this too, but I did find over the years that college students are somewhat naturally destructive, you know. And so if you gave them a chainsaw, and pointed at the woods, you know, they would go at it with vigor. And they also did well with drip torches and other things too, you know. So college-age students were a good age to work with, you know.
Well, we should probably tell about now manager at Glenwood, Kevin Cotz's. You handed him a torch once and said, start up this line.
You know, that involved the
300 yards later, you're
Yeah,
screaming at him.
Well, yeah, and then under the certification, I had my brother-in-law. It was on a Sunday.
That's right.
I'm driving the truck, and Kevin's heading out with the drip torch, never to look back.
Yeah.
And the wind was doing quite well out of the southwest, and then kind of switched to the
Oh.
southeast, which we had a pretty long. And my brother-in-law was hanging on the back of the truck with a little hose. He was putting it out, you know. Well, pretty soon the flames are going across, and
Yeah.
I'm honking the horn, flashing the lights and everything, and Kevin, he's just heading for the far end, you know. He knew where he had to get to. So eventually we got together, and
I
it
do love
was a
that
day of no
story.
radios, and
Yeah.
Communications were not the best on the line. Well,
Well, what I think you tell me what you think are your three most significant contributions to our field.
well, probably 1 and 2 would be just the adding wildlife areas, you know, and you know, I came to retire, you know, in the years working on the acquisition, I used to keep track of the acres, you know, per year and whatever.
Right.
And probably even had a graph of that. I had graphs of a lot of things, but I got to retirement and I thought, I'm not figuring out how many acres we bought or whatever. It's just it's written in the land, and you let it go at that. And so land acquisition was a big one, and then I guess just, well, yeah, I would say, you know, talking about just working with people, but Sue, my wife Sue is a journalist, you know, and to the University of Minnesota also. But so the first place I came to when we came to town was I went into the newspaper office, you know, because you had to work with the newspaper and also, or wanted to.
Yeah.
And also the radio station, you know, to get to know those people. So it's kind of, and more than one person has commented, you don't want to take on for an enemy or an argument somebody who buys his ink by the gallon. So that's good.
Well said.
So, yeah, so you have, you know, and so I always had good relations, you know, with both. You know, well, and it was a daily paper in Crookston, but Red Lake Falls Gazette, I got that for a lot of years.
Yeah.
But we managers for a long time could send out our own news releases and news to the papers and whatever, and we for quite a few years, Earth Day or whatever, in the spring, we managers got together sometimes, and we'd fill up like a whole page in the news, or, you know, half page in the paper on various things, you know. So yeah, we kind of took that more seriously than we do these days, I guess. But working with the press and people is a big one. Yeah.
Well,
just relationships, I
Yeah.
guess, you know, with a lot of people is a big one.
Well, and that was certainly the foundation of everything that you've accomplished in life.
So we wildlife managers, yeah, maybe to just bring it to a close here, we move out to the woods and the brush, and never to have to talk to another person again. And the whole job is
Exactly.
dealing with the public, and you need approval. You know, how are you going to do that? You know, and so you find yourself, it's a lot about working with people. You know, so yeah. Well, yeah. We're going to end on this one. Sportsmen's clubs, and Ross and I, well, we got to a lot of sportsmen's club meetings, and we would go to the Fertile meeting, and one of us would always say, "Yeah, we're going to get home early tonight." So trying to get two people out the door, and both of them have to want to be the one to turn the lights out, you know. So so it would be 11:30 or midnight we'd get home. But one night we went, well, a number of nights we went down to the Foston Club meeting, and maybe you already know where this is going, but so with Raleigh Rue down there and various other members of that club and a lot of those sportsman's club meetings never really ended with adjournment. It almost never was adjourning. It just turned into stories at the end, you know, and so anyway, one night Raleigh gets going about, and who is the spark plug in the Boston club, and Raleigh gets talking about the days when they were shooting bats coming out of a house, an old house down there, and Ross is just, "You're shooting bats? Oh, they eat a million mosquitoes every night, and you're shooting bats?" And oh, he's kind of, and one's feeding on the other back and forth, and you know what it takes to shoot a bat, and moaning and groaning about shooting them, and so eventually the stories ended in there. So we're walking out to our vehicles later, and Ross says to Raleigh, "Raleigh, come on over. I have to show you what I got in my truck in the back." And so he goes over there, and Ross opens the trunk, and he's got 3 or 4 swan decoys back there. Which Raleigh says, "You're shooting swans?" "What? How could you be shooting swans?"
Yeah, fair game.
Yeah. So to each their own, I guess.
Yeah.
That might be a good
Well,
one.
I think we got to end it, Terry, with your thoughts on the future of our profession. I mean, the changes you've seen, a little more politics in it.
And lots of change as well. I'd say, well, that's, you know, I think in farming areas, maybe farmers have gone about as far as they can go. So, and we're seeing this. It's going the other way in a way. We have, through funding mechanisms in a lot of different ways, that's a big plus. Now we're agencies and Pheasants Forever and Prairie Chicken Society and Ducks Unlimited are buying cropland or whatever that maybe isn't the best cropland and turning it back to prairie.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of maybe we hit a low point there. Well, who knows? Farming continues to intensify, and I guess with a lot of the spraying and whatever that's going on, you know, I mean, who knows where that can all end, I guess. But
Yeah.
at any rate, as far as land, you know, we're still adding to it, and despite a lot of concerns at some levels, you know, that agencies own a lot of land, but we are blessed to be in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
That I don't know, we're a liberal state in a lot of ways, you know. That in fact, I was thinking the other day, you know, this talk about going to Mars, and I thought, you'll never get anybody from Minnesota to ever want to go to Mars. Why would you want to go? You might as well. Why wouldn't you just go camp in the Death Valley, you know? And you know, how could you leave all these
backs there? I know that.
How could you leave all this water and woods and
That's
whatever, and
Yeah.
then go on the Martian landscape and call that home? You know? So I don't know what state they'll come from, but it won't be Minnesota.
So I think that is a good way to end our conversation. So, thanks so much, Terry.
Thanks, thanks, gentlemen. That was a delightful trip down memory lane.
I should have had the clock over there.